If she is the first thought in your mind every morning, but she is nowhere in your life, this message is not here to comfort you. It is here to wake you up. Because what you are feeling right now is not love, and it is not destiny. It is a psychological trap that silently keeps strong people stuck while life moves on without them. And if you don't hear this today, you may stay in the same emotional place for years, calling it patience, calling it hope, calling it loyalty, while it slowly drains you. You keep telling yourself that something real existed, that the connection was different, that timing was wrong, that if circumstances changed, everything would fall into place. But listen carefully. Real connection does not live only in your imagination. It shows up in actions, choices, and consistency. And the longer someone lives only in your head, the more power they take from your life without even trying. What makes this dangerous is that it feels deep. It feels intense. It feels meaningful. But intensity without direction is not depth. It is confusion. And confusion, when repeated, becomes emotional addiction. You are not missing her. You are missing the version of yourself you thought you would become through her. This video is not about blaming her. It is about exposing what happens when you wait to be chosen instead of choosing yourself. Because the truth is, the man you are becoming cannot be built while you are emotionally stuck in someone who never stepped forward. If you stay until the end, you will understand why letting go is not weakness, why clarity matters more than chemistry, and why the moment you stop thinking about her is the moment your real life begins. Let's start by telling the truth most people avoid, because this is where everything quietly goes wrong. When a woman exists only in your thoughts, but not in your life, what you are experiencing is not love. It feels like love, it hurts like love, it consumes your attention like love, but psychologically, it is attachment to an idea. And attachment is dangerous because it does not require consent from the other person. It only needs your imagination to stay alive. Think about it carefully. Love is interactive, it has rhythm, it moves back and forth, it involves presence, a choice, effort, and accountability. Attachment, on the other hand, survives perfectly well in silence. It grows in absence. It feeds on uncertainty. That is why you find yourself thinking about her more when she is not around, not responding, not choosing. Your mind fills the gaps. It writes stories. It creates meaning where there is none. And the longer this continues, the more real it feels. This is where many intelligent, self-aware men get trapped. They confuse emotional intensity with emotional truth. Just because something feels deep does not mean it is real. Depth without direction is not connection, it is confusion. And confusion, repeated over time, becomes emotional dependency. You are no longer responding to who she is, you are responding to what she represents. A possibility, a future, a version of yourself you imagine becoming if she were to finally say yes. That is the uncomfortable part most men don't want to face. You are not attached to her as a person. You are attached to the identity you think you would step into through her. That is why letting go feels like losing a part of yourself. Because in your mind, she became the bridge to your growth, your confidence, your emotional fulfillment. But no human being should ever be carrying that weight for you. Psychologically, when someone stays in your head but never fully enters your life, your nervous system remains in a state of anticipation. You are always waiting for a message, a sign, a shift in energy. That waiting keeps you emotionally alert but mentally stuck. You are investing energy without receiving stability in return. Over time, this creates anxiety, rumination, and a quiet erosion of self-worth. Not because she did something wrong, but because you stayed where you were not chosen. And here is the key insight. Love does not keep you suspended. Love grounds you. Love simplifies. Love brings clarity, not constant interpretation. If you have to analyze every word, every pause, every delay, you are not in a relationship. You are in a psychological loop. And loops are not romantic. They are draining. You may tell yourself that you are patient, understanding, emotionally mature, But patience without reciprocity is self-neglect. Understanding without boundaries is self-betrayal. Emotional maturity is not the ability to tolerate confusion, it is the ability to walk away from it. When a woman genuinely wants to be in your life, she does not remain an abstract presence. She becomes concrete. She shows up in decisions, not just conversations. She creates space for you, not just thoughts about you. And most importantly, you do not have to imagine where you stand. You know. So if she is constantly in your head, but absent from your life, the question is not why she hasn't chosen you. The real question is why you are choosing to stay emotionally invested in something that does not move forward. Awareness is the beginning of power. The moment you see the difference between love and attachment, you stop chasing clarity and start creating dignity. And that shift changes everything. Now let's talk about the part that keeps most people trapped far longer than they should be. Mixed signals. Because this is where the mind starts negotiating with reality instead of accepting it. When someone gives you inconsistency, emotional distance, half presence, or delayed responses, the easiest lie to tell yourself is that there is something hidden underneath. You call it complexity, you call it depth, you call it fear of intimacy. But most of the time, it is none of those things. It is simply a lack of intention. The human brain is uncomfortable with uncertainty. When we don't get clear answers, we instinctively start looking for patterns, meanings, explanations. That is why mixed signals feel so powerful. They activate hope and anxiety at the same time. One moment you feel close, the next moment you feel pushed away. That emotional contrast creates attachment, not because the connection is strong, but because your nervous system is constantly trying to resolve the tension. You are not bonding with the person, you are bonding with the unpredictability. Here is the truth most people don't want to hear. Confusion is not a sign of depth, it is a sign of misalignment. When someone wants you, clarity is not something you have to extract from them. It naturally exists. You are not decoding their behavior. You are not reading between the lines. You are not wondering where you stand. You know, desire expressed clearly does not create chaos in the mind. It creates calm. Mixed signals are often interpreted as internal conflict in the other person. You tell yourself they like you but are scared. They care but are not ready. They feel something but don't know how to act on it. And while these stories sound compassionate, they conveniently place you in a waiting position, a position where you keep investing emotional energy while postponing your own growth and boundaries. What feels like empathy slowly turns into self-sacrifice. Psychologically, when you accept mixed signals, you train yourself to accept ambiguity in your value. You start believing that being partially chosen is better than not being chosen at all. That belief quietly lowers your standards. You stop asking for consistency. You stop expecting effort. You start feeling grateful for scraps of attention. And over time, this reshapes how you see yourself, not just in this connection, but in all future ones. There is also something important to understand about communication. People are far more honest through their behavior than through their words. Someone can say they care while consistently creating distance. Someone can say they are interested while making no space for you in their life. When words and actions do not align, actions are the truth. Mixed signals are not a misunderstanding, they are information, and here is the uncomfortable reality. If someone truly wants to be with you, they will not risk losing you through ambiguity. They will not leave room for constant doubt. They will not keep you guessing. Clarity is not something people with genuine interest avoid. It is something they offer because they want stability, not control. Waiting for mixed signals to turn into clarity is one of the most emotionally expensive habits you can have. It keeps you stuck in analysis instead of action. It makes you reactive instead of grounded. You begin to measure your worth by someone else's mood, availability, or attention, and that is not connection, that is dependency. The moment you stop romanticizing confusion, your perspective shifts. You stop asking why they are inconsistent and start asking why you are available to inconsistency. You stop trying to understand their inner world and start protecting your own. That is not coldness. That is emotional intelligence. Clarity is not a luxury in relationships. It is a requirement. And the absence of it is not a challenge to overcome, but a message to respect. The sooner you treat mixed signals as an answer rather than a puzzle, the sooner you free yourself to invest in people and situations that meet you with intention. And that decision alone can change the entire direction of your life. Now let's go one layer deeper, because this is where the real damage happens, and it's often invisible while it's happening. When you stay emotionally invested in someone who has not chosen you, you don't just lose time. You slowly lose yourself, not in a dramatic way, but in quiet, subtle ways that feel normal until one day you realize you no longer recognize your own center. At first, it feels harmless. You tell yourself you are just being patient. You are just giving things time. You are just emotionally available. But without realizing it, your attention begins to orbit around her. Your mood becomes reactive. A message lifts you up. Silence pulls you down. You start organizing your emotional life around her presence or absence. And that is the moment your inner authority begins to erode. Psychologically, this happens because the brain is wired to seek resolution. When something feels unfinished, unresolved, or uncertain, it occupies mental space. You begin to replay conversations, imagine different outcomes, rehearse what you would say if you ever had the chance to explain yourself. None of this moves your life forward, but it consumes enormous emotional energy. Energy that should be invested in your purpose, your growth, your physical and mental strength. Slowly, without noticing, you postpone yourself. You delay decisions. You hold back from fully committing to your own life because part of you is still waiting. Waiting for clarity. Waiting for validation. Waiting for her to finally choose you. This waiting becomes an identity, and identities are powerful. Once you identify as the man who is almost chosen, you stop behaving like the man who chooses himself. This is where self-respect quietly slips away, not because you don't value yourself, but because you keep placing your worth in a future that depends on someone else's decision. You measure your value by how she responds to you instead of how aligned you are with your own standards. Over time, this creates an inner imbalance. You are present in your life, but not fully engaged. Your body moves forward, but your mind stays behind. Philosophically, this is a form of self-abandonment. You outsource your sense of meaning to another person. You allow someone else's uncertainty to dictate your emotional stability. And the cost of that is high, because the more you wait for someone to confirm your worth, the harder it becomes to generate it from within. Confidence fades. Focus weakens. Discipline becomes inconsistent, not because you are incapable, but because your energy is divided. Many men believe their suffering comes from rejection. In reality, it comes from lingering, from staying emotionally present where they are not wanted. Rejection is clean. It hurts, but it has an ending. Lingering has no clear endpoint. It stretches pain over time and disguises it as hope. And hope, when disconnected from reality, becomes the most dangerous form of denial. Here is something important to understand. A woman does not have to mistreat you for you to lose yourself. She only has to remain undefined in your life while you remain defined by her. That imbalance slowly reshapes your behavior. You become more cautious, more accommodating, less grounded. You stop leading your own life because you are subconsciously waiting for permission to move on. The turning point is not when she changes her mind. The turning point is when you change your orientation, when you realize that no connection is worth the cost of your self-respect. When you see that your life cannot be built in a waiting room. Growth requires movement. Power requires direction. And neither can exist where you are emotionally paused. The moment you choose to step back, to reclaim your focus, to reinvest in your own life, something shifts internally. You remember who you were before your energy became scattered. You regain your center. And from that place, everything changes. Because a man who is anchored in himself is no longer available for half connection, half clarity, or half choice. And that decision alone restores everything you thought you lost. Now comes the part that most people misunderstand because letting go is often confused with loss. In reality, letting go is not something you do for the other person. It is something you do to restore your own authority over your life. When you release someone who has not chosen you, you are not admitting defeat. You are ending a pattern that was slowly draining you of clarity, energy, and direction. Many people believe they need closure before they can move on. They wait for explanations, apologies, or one final conversation that will make everything make sense. But closure is not something another person gives you. Closure is a decision. It is the moment you stop asking questions that keep you emotionally tied to the past and start asking ones that pull you forward. The truth is, clarity rarely comes from dialogue. It comes from observation, from seeing what is, not what you wish it to be. Psychologically, letting go creates space, and space is essential for growth. When your mind is no longer occupied by someone who exists only as a thought, your attention returns to the present. Your nervous system settles. You begin to feel grounded again. That sense of internal stability is not accidental. It is what happens when your emotional investment finally aligns with reality. You stop feeding a story that has no future, and your mind responds with relief. There is also a deeper shift that happens when you let go. You stop seeking validation externally and begin rebuilding it internally. You realize that your worth was never dependent on whether someone chose you. It was dependent on whether you chose yourself. This is where real power comes from. Not from being desired, but from being self-directed. Not from being wanted, but from wanting a life that reflects your values. Letting go also sharpens your standards. Once you experience the peace that comes from emotional alignment, you become far less tolerant of ambiguity. You stop entertaining half effort, half interest, and half availability. You understand that connection should feel expansive, not draining, that it should add clarity to your life, not confusion. And this awareness protects you not just in relationships, but in every area of your life. Philosophically, this is about authorship. You either write the story of your life, or you become a supporting character in someone else's. When you hold on to someone who is not moving toward you, you give them narrative control. Your emotions react to their choices. Your future becomes conditional. Letting go is the act of taking the pen back. It is the moment you decide that your life will no longer revolve around unanswered questions. This is also where discipline enters the conversation, because letting go is not a single moment of strength. It is a series of daily choices. Choosing not to check their social media, choosing not to replay old conversations, choosing to redirect your focus back to your body, your work, your goals. These choices may feel small, but they compound, and over time, they rebuild your identity. As you reclaim your focus, you begin to build a life that stands on its own, a life that is full, structured, and purposeful. And from that place, something important changes. You are no longer chasing connection. You are attracting alignment. The people who enter your life now do not feel like questions. They feel like answers. Not because they are perfect, but because they are present. The woman meant for you will never live only in your head. She will exist in your life, in your choices, in your shared direction, and until that person arrives, your responsibility is not to wait. It is to become, to build a life so solid that love becomes an addition, not a rescue. So here is the final truth to sit with. Letting go is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of the chapter where you stop asking to be chosen and start choosing the life you were meant to live.